And welcome back to Law and Crime, ladies and gentlemen. We are staying here as late as necessary to cover the McStay murder case, where defendant Charles Chase Merritt is accused of killing that family of four in California and then leaving the bodies in the Mojave Desert, where they were not discovered for quite some time. Susan Blake, the mother of victim Joseph Joey McStay, is on the stand right now facing cross-examination from the defense. The defense is bringing up an individual named Dan Kavanaugh. The defense seems to be pointing towards Kavanaugh as a possible alternate suspect, and we're hearing a lot of testimony about financial records. We were planning to dip into live testimony, but they just took a break in court. So, thankfully, joining me tonight is Judge Ashley Willcott, fellow Law and Crime host. Ashley, are you there? I think you're there. There you are. Good to see you this evening.
Aaron.
Okay, so
good to see you.
So this is a lot of financial testimony and cross-examination about checks, forms of payments, PayPal, apparently questions about whether or not Dan Kavanaugh was being paid by PayPal or through traditional payroll means. All of this is rolling into a cross-examination where about half of jurors are taking very close notes. It's tough to listen to it, though, from our perspective in bits and pieces, I have to admit.
Sure, I agree with you, Aaron, but I think it's very clear that the defense is doing exactly what you said. They are trying to point fingers and show why the defendant is not the one who committed a crime, but instead that there was a motive. This is all about motive, a financial motive for someone else who did the murder, not the defendant, and that would be this Dan Kavanaugh.
You know, look, I mean, some people who are close to the family really are saying, look, you know, we had Patrick McStay, the father of Joey McStay, on earlier today. Not a surprise. He thinks the prosecution has the right guy here. There are questions about the veracity of the witness who's on the stand right now, Susan Blake. She's getting cross-examined about checks, and some people think this is damaging. Other people think it's not. People on the other side of the aisle are saying, hey, look, this is all credible. This is good. This makes sense. This woman is standing up against cross-examination. One has to wonder whether the jurors themselves are really kind of on the fence with this, the way some of the reaction is coming in off social media.
Well, I think given the fact that Kathy's able to report to us because she's there in the courtroom live, that some of the jurors are taking copious notes, I think clearly the jury is paying attention to this testimony and is going to weigh it into the entire picture. But remember, again, the money piece goes to motive, but it doesn't say who necessarily killed this family of four. And so I do think while it's going to be weighed carefully by the jury, I just don't know by the end of the trial, is it going to be enough to say someone else must have done it because they have the motive? I'm not convinced. Don't know.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait. I mean, we're really early on in a case that prosecutors are saying is going to last months, and this is only the second day of it. It's only the first day of having a live witness on the stand. The first day was nothing but opening statements. Look, we're going to take a quick break to pause and listen to testimony from Susan Blake, the witness who is still on the stand. Again, they're taking a quick break. This is where Susan Blake talks about the first time Chase Merritt, the defendant, came over to her house. Okay, folks, we are going to bring you back in, I believe, to testimony from Susan Blake in the Charles Merritt murder case. I'm here along with Judge Ashley Willcott. Judge, we were talking about this testimony being a little bit dense, jurors taking notes, having to really focus in on where the money was moving, because that's a really critical part of the puzzle here, where you have a business associate accused of killing a fellow business associate and that associate's family.
Absolutely. So you know as well as I do, Aaron, there are two types of defenses. Either one, this defendant didn't do it, or two, this defendant did it, but there were extenuating circumstances, self-defense, incapacitated, whatever the argument is. The defense in this case has posed the theory and is making their defense as, you have the wrong person, he didn't do it. One of the ways to cast reasonable doubt is to say, if he didn't do it, who did? Well, here's a good explanation. Look, follow the money, right? Follow the money and the money trail, and it points to Kavanaugh, a different business relationship than this defendant, so he must have done it.
Okay, that basically takes what the state said during openings and flips it on its head, because the state said this was all about greed and that Chase Merritt, the defendant, is the greedy party here who is getting his hands on money. So the way the defense is trying to flip that is to say, well, you know, other people wound up with money here as well. That makes sense. Ashley, I know you're going to stick in there with us throughout the duration. We're expecting about another hour worth of testimony this evening out of California. In the meantime, let's listen to some previous testimony from Susan Blake while we wait for this case to resume once again from a brief break with more live testimony. This is testimony where Susan Blake talks about going to the McStay family home. Now, prosecutors say that is where the crime occurred. Other people aren't so sure, but the mother of the victim here describes cleaning up what was left behind. So there we have testimony from the mother of victim Joey McStay. Joey McStay, the father, his wife, his children, all killed, 4 bodies found in the Mojave Desert. Judge Ashley Willcott is with me here on the Law and Crime Network to continue to break this case down as we wait for live testimony to resume. Ashley, this is really interesting testimony from the mother here, because she's saying that she went to the house, that basically this family left with dirty dishes, things laying around, you know, it was like they just up and vanished. What she's not saying is that it looked like there was a crime scene there. It's one thing to find dirty dishes laying around. It's another thing to find evidence of tampering, a broken lock, a broken window, something that makes something look amiss. And the prosecutor promised us during openings that these crimes happened in the home. So where's the evidence of it?
I don't know. So this case to me is going to be difficult for the prosecution, Aaron, because they've got multiple crime scenes. They've got the home. They've got the burial grounds over a long period of time. And just like you said, she never reports or is testifying that there was a struggle, broken things on the ground, broken locks, a door open for her to say, I've got to call the police. It looks like somebody's come into the house. None of that. And my understanding of the testimony is in 2010, when the police did a welfare check and then a family member crawled through a window, the brother, to get into the home, that the police even said at that time there were no signs of a struggle. So I think that's one of the obstacles the prosecution is going to have to overcome.
Exactly. I agree. And you know, there's all these different theories swimming around about exactly what happened to this family of 4. You know, I've heard some of them, and I'm waiting to see, okay, look, what's going to come out in court? What's this jury going to hear? But this is a case that's been kicked around a lot. You know, the father of the victim, the ex-husband of the woman whose testimony we've been talking about here, he's got different theories about it. He wrote his own book about the case. You know, but what's the jury going to hear? We heard a lot of tall promises. We heard prosecutors say there's evidence of a crime scene there in the house. We heard the defense say, hey, look, you know, we've got these unknown DNA tests floating out there. What's going on with the unknown DNA tests?
You know, again, Aaron, I agree with you, because we start in 2010 when they disappeared, evidence about stuff done on the computer, them possibly going to Mexico, sightings in Mexico. It wasn't until 3 years later, 2013, that the police said, okay, they went voluntarily to Mexico. Then the remains were found. Here we are 4 or 5 years later with the defendant on trial for these crimes, and yet another time period has to be covered. So I think there were a lot of different promises made by the prosecution and defense, and what is the evidence going to show? That, to me, is one reason why it's so crucial that Law and Crime is following this trial live, because this is a very complex case to prove evidence-wise.
Look, I agree 100%. Speaking of evidence, live testimony has just resumed seconds ago, so let's listen back in. This is Susan Blake, the mother of murder victim Joey McStay. She's been on the stand facing cross-examination. They took a quick break. They're back, so let's listen. Welcome back to Law and Crime, ladies and gentlemen. We are continuing to cover the McStay family murder case out of California, where testimony is in its first day. The trial is in its second day. Opening statements took all day yesterday for the official first day of the case. Susan Blake, the victim's mother who helped him run his family business for a while, has been on the stand for quite some time, and I believe they are probably in the midst of a sidebar right now over a number of objections, because there have been a lot of objections in the last couple of minutes. Her testimony is the source of heated debate in that courtroom. Judge Ashley Willcott is still here with me on the Law and Crime Network right now. So, Ashley, bring us up to speed on some of these objections, and why are we hearing so many of them?
I don't know. We're hearing so many of them because of the form of the question that the defense attorney is asking is not allowable under the rules of evidence. So speculative or speculation means he's asking this mother of the deceased to speculate or guess about what somebody thought or what was going on. That's not allowed under the rules of evidence. The second is hearsay. In order for what someone else said to be admissible in court, there has to be an exception to hearsay. It falls within the way the questions are being phrased. Neither of these requirements are met, so they're being sustained, meaning the defense cannot keep asking questions the way that he is asking them. Let me give you a great example, Aaron. He did get out, as you just pointed out on cross-examination, that the mother of the deceased said that he wanted to buy Dan out. Well, in fact, what she said in the statement to the police was that her son had said he wanted to get rid of Dan. Those are two different statements in terms of what people can make of those statements, i.e. the jury. But the way defense is asking questions, he wasn't able to make that distinction to the jury.
Yeah, look, I mean, and that's an important distinction, because buying someone out means basically taking more control of the business for yourself. It means giving someone a financial reward for basically going away. Getting rid of someone sounds like an unhappy relationship, some kind of termination, something like that. Actually, so, you know, that's an important distinction. And if it's not clear from the answers this time around, I consider that impeachment. What do you think?
Oh, completely agree. That's a very important distinction. The other thing we always have to keep in mind is these jurors are listening to all of these objections being sustained. It totally interrupts the flow of questions and the jury hearing the answers and the facts that are being introduced. Instead, they're sitting there listening to these lawyers talk back and forth and the judge having to rule. So it really interferes, I think, with the jury's ability to discern what facts they're hearing from that witness.
Look, I agree as well. And, you know, we've been sort of in and out here. And part of that reason is because these objections are, we presume, resulting in sidebars. It's more difficult for us to monitor that, though, because this is an audio-only witness. The judge said, you know, look, you can't even show the attorney asking the questions. The judge said, get all the cameras out of the courtroom. We can just listen to it. That makes it all the more difficult. But it sounds like things are picking back up again. So let's listen back in. Again, this is the McStay family murder case where defendant Chase Merritt is facing charges that he killed a business partner, the business partner's wife, and the business partner's children. Let's listen back into Susan Blake, the mother of victim Joey McStay. She's back on the stand. If I'm guessing correctly, Ashley Willcott, what do you think? This sounds like attorneys kind of flipping through papers trying to get to the key point that they want to bring up in some previous police document. As you were saying, big questions here about whether or not the victim wanted to get rid of Dan Kavanaugh or whether the victim wanted to buy Dan Kavanaugh out, and that's a big distinction. And just to be clear yet again, if you're just joining us, Dan Kavanaugh is the person the defense claims could be the real killer here. Of course, the defense is saying Merritt's not the one that did it at all.
Right. And I think what's important for everyone to realize, and again, it's why I love Law and Crime, because there is a way to ask questions, lay the right foundation, to use a statement, as you well know, to impeach a witness, so that the witness on the stand, his mother today, says, oh, he said he wanted to buy Dan out. You can ask the proper questions to lay the foundation. Didn't you give a statement to the police? Do you remember giving that statement? That was when they were executing the search warrant. And here, read along with me right here, line 5. Read this line to me, and she can say, oh, he said he wanted Dan out or wanted to get rid of Dan. So there's a way to ask the questions to lay the foundation to not draw an objection to get it into evidence. But this defense attorney seems to be struggling with that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And look, I mean, this is not the time to struggle with it. This is the time to really make these objections count, because if the jurors get lost in the midst of this, then they miss the point. And the point is that if this woman tells one version of the story to police and another version of the story to people on the stand, then they can use that to discredit her credibility across the board if they wish.
Yeah, exactly. And if we listen to how she's testifying now versus what we think that statement says, she is softening all of her testimony now to basically get the focus off of Kavanaugh because she may want to see this defendant be the one responsible for these crimes.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a vested interest here, maybe, some personal bias. We don't really know. This is the job of the attorneys, though, to make these very quick, very staccato objections and make them make sense. I guess we've got new audio coming through the feed now. This is a redirect of this key witness, Susan Blake, the mother of victim Joseph McStay. We are listening to live audio-only testimony from Susan Blake, the mother of murder victim Joseph McStay. McStay, his wife, and their 2 young children were found dead after they were missing for some time. The bodies turning up in California's Mojave Desert. We will be back with more live coverage of the McStay family murder case when we return. It sounds like we're very close to the end of the day in testimony there from Susan Blake, who is the mother of victim Joseph McStay. She also helped McStay run his family business, and it is through that family business where prosecutors say the defendant on trial right now, Chase Merritt, met McStay, and ultimately that perhaps greed, as prosecutors said, is what led this defendant, Charles Merritt, he goes by Chase, to kill not only Joseph McStay, his business partner, but McStay's wife, Summer, and their two sons, who were ages 4 and 3. Judge Ashley Willcott is still on the line with me here on the Law&Crime Network. Ashley, I know we tried to talk a couple of seconds ago. We're waiting to see how they're going to proceed, if they're going to try to squeeze in a few more minutes of testimony from another witness, or if they're going to wrap up for the day. But look, something I want to talk about with this testimony from Susan Blake. Remember, she went to the family house, and prosecutors say it was at the family house where these crimes happened. They claim they've got evidence of it, but we don't know exactly what that is yet. So that's a big mystery. What is interesting is that Susan Blake didn't provide any description that sounded like a crime scene, but there was apparently this really strange discussion about the victim's wedding dress. Apparently, the wedding dress was found unbagged, spread out as if it was on a display. And that is how this witness, Susan Blake, found it in the family home when she finally went in to check on her relatives. She said that it was odd because brides don't store their wedding dresses draped out like that. Ashley, what do we make of this?
So I would agree. Typically, brides don't leave their wedding dresses stored like that. But I think somehow this is going to play into either argument, and that is that this family voluntarily fled to Mexico, which is what law enforcement said in 2013. In April of 2013, they said, we think they voluntarily took off to Mexico. There'd been a search on a computer about passports for kids. Maybe there's going to be some argument that they were going to go and have another wedding, or she was going to take that dress. I don't know. The other part of that is maybe they're going to argue, hey, that was put out to throw the police off and to make it look like they left the house, had some things out, or packing for Mexico. It's just an odd piece of evidence that in and of itself may not mean anything, but it could play into either theory in this case, I think.
Yeah, I'm really curious. One might say that if that was done by a killer, then this was somehow a lot more personal than just a business relationship, unless the family was all kind of involved in the business. And of course, it sounds like that was the case. Susan Blake, the victim's mother, was involved in helping manage it at some point. A small family business sort of scenario. Look, we are going to let folks know at home that apparently they're calling another witness here, Mike McStay, the victim's brother, getting in a few minutes of testimony, but we have to take a break first. We'll be right back here on Law and Crime. We're listening to testimony from the victim's brother, Michael McStay, in the so-called McStay family murder case out of California, where a family of 4 was killed. The question is, who did it? Is it this defendant, or is it an alternate suspect the defense has named? Judge Ashley Willcott is on the line with me here on the Law and Crime Network. Ashley, we're hearing a lot of the biographical information about the family business. And look, we know that the mother, Susan Blake, invested in the business and or is involved in managing it, I should say, and that Mike McStay, the witness on the stand now, he also invested. He said it was a great investment for him.
Right, absolutely. And so it's his brother's business. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, Darren, this is a family business based in California. All of the family involved in some capacity. That's not unusual. That's not atypical. But they're laying all that groundwork to then bring in who else invested, worked for the business, and what other business relationships might have gone awry, meaning that this defendant was the one who then murdered the family.
Exactly. Judge Willcott, we appreciate you being with us here on the Law and Crime Network today.
Thank you, Aaron. Have a good night.
See you in the host chair again sometime soon. We're going to sign off for the evening, folks, because testimony was expected to go right up until about 7 o'clock Eastern, and we are at that hour. They might be asking a few finishing questions, I should say. If you'd like to continue watching, go to our dedicated feeds on lawandcrime.com. Our live coverage will pick up at 8:30 Eastern tomorrow morning.